Sometimes a dream almost whispers. Your instincts, your human personal intuition, always whispers, it never shouts. What calls to me is not whether a film is going to make $1 gazillion. Mm-hmm. What calls to me is there a deep urge in the center of myself that only that film will release.
Because look at how nice his films are. I mean, just they're nice. They're about love. They're about wonder. They're about, you know, good things. They're not about rotten, awful things. And that's because that's what Steven responds to.
Who you are is original. It just is, because you're not Tom, you're not me, and you're not your best friend, and you're not your teacher, you're not your parents. You are you. And because of that, you do have every bone in your body is an original bone.
And your conscience shouts, here's what you should do, while your intuition whispers, here's what you could do. Listen to that voice that tells you what you could do. If I had to single out one area to which I have an utter devotion, it would be with my preoccupation with the idea and the fight to still believe in the idea when so many others around you just don't get it, and the challenge of staying interested in one single idea for sometimes years, and the struggle not to contaminate that idea after months and years of obsessing over it. When I was in my early teens, I stayed up all night writing a screenplay and felt something to this day I swear I cannot get enough of. It was as close to the feeling of flying as I have ever had. You know what I mean when you're trying to get the words on paper and you're 3 thoughts ahead of yourself and it's a race to get it all down before it goes back to wherever that stuff originally comes from. And it was called inspiration. And I actually made a movie from that script I wrote all night, and it was called Firelight. And it was truly an awful movie. But the process was what it was all about. The experience of that obsessive focus, of having an idea and actually being able to photograph it. That's been the magic potion for me ever since. When you have a dream, and the dream isn't something you dream and then it happens, the dream is something you never knew was going to come into your life. Dreams always come from behind you, not right between your eyes. It sneaks up on you. But when you have a dream, it doesn't often come at you screaming in your face, this is who you are, this is what you must be for the rest of your life. Sometimes a dream almost whispers. And I've always said to my kids, the hardest thing to listen to, your instincts, your human personal intuition, always whispers, it never shouts. Very hard to hear. So you have to, every day of your lives, be ready to hear what whispers in your ear. It very rarely shouts. And if you can listen to the whisper, and if it tickles your heart, and it's something you think you want to do for the rest of your life, then that is going to be what you do for the rest of your life, and we will benefit from everything you do. Thank you very much.
Emotional quotient in every film of yours. And is emotion close to you? And what is the deciding factor? Is business more important for you, or the emotional factor in a story?
No, the emotional factor in the story always trumps
because you
business.
have been breaking the business barriers very often.
But what calls to me is not whether a film is going to make $1 gazillion. Mm-hmm. What calls to me is there a deep urge in the center of myself that only that film will release and then exorcise. And that's the only condition I'll direct a movie. If I'm doing a sequel, of course. If I'm doing The Lost World, The Secret of Jurrasic Park, of course, I know that the bar's been raised, because if it doesn't make this X amount of money, everybody thinks it's a failure. And there's that added pressure of great expectation. The Indiana Jones series, they're not sequels, but on all the other 3 Indiana Jones films that I've directed, there's a tremendous level of expectation, and that's nerve-wracking. Yeah. But the fact that those movies are successful and make a lot of money isn't why I decided to direct sequels to the Indiana Jones series.
I mean, when I'm looking at student films or I'm looking at first-time directors' short films, I'm not looking for how great the camera is. I mean, so many people, I can look at any TV commercial and know that there are directors out there that can place a camera and sell a product, but can they tell a story that holds together and is compelling and original? And that's the secret. You know, I'm more interested in a storyteller that doesn't know anything about where to put the camera than someone who knows everything about the camera but nothing about the story process.
What advice would you give to kids who want to make movies?
Oh, it's a good question, because I would tell kids who want to make movies to make movies. When I was a kid, the only way I could make movies was borrow money from my father and borrow his 8mm movie camera and borrow the money because film was expensive. The film and the developing of the film was expensive then. Today you can take your telephone, your cell phone, and you can make a movie on that. And if it's a really cool movie and it's funny and it's dramatic or whatever, you can post it on YouTube. So it's a lot easier for kids today to get started and follow their passion and pursue their heart's, you know, desire to be a filmmaker, because the tools that were less available to my generation growing up are completely available to yours. So there's no reason why you can't express who you are through video.
Spielberg spent $30 million making 1941, an over-budget sophomoric attempt at comedy. The film was considered an artistic and financial flop by both critics and moviegoers, and marked his first, and so far only, crashing failure.
I was low. I was depressed. I was not feeling good.
What got you out of it?
Starting, just throwing myself back into my work again and starting to work on Raiders.
Burned by the disaster of 1941, Spielberg redeemed himself in the eyes of the movie industry with the success of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Indiana Jones was the hero of Raiders. He won the lady and got the treasure, and I wanted to be the behind-the-scenes hero who brought the film in for under schedule and under budget.
Well, what you choose to do next is what we call in the movies the character-defining moment. Now, these are moments you're very familiar with, like in the last Star Wars, The Force Awakens, when Rey realizes the Force is with her, or Indiana Jones choosing mission over fear by jumping into a pile of snakes. Now, in a 2-hour movie, you get a handful of character-defining moments, but in real life, you face them every day. Life is one strong, long string of character-defining moments. And I was lucky that at 18, I knew what I exactly wanted to do, but I didn't know who I was. How could I, and how could any of us? Because for the first 25 years of our lives, we are trained to listen to voices that are not our own. Parents and professors fill our heads with wisdom and information, and then employers and mentors take their place and explain how this world really works. And usually these voices of authority make sense, but sometimes doubt starts to creep into our heads and into our hearts, and even when we think that's not quite how I see the world, it's kind of easier just to nod in agreement and go along, and for a while I let that going along define my character, because I was repressing my own point of view, because like in that Nilsson song, everybody was talking at me so I couldn't hear the echoes of my mind. And at first, the internal voice I needed to listen to was hardly audible, and it was hardly noticeable, kind of like me in high school. But then I started paying more attention, and my intuition kicked in. And I want to be clear that your intuition is different from your conscience. They work in tandem, but here's the distinction. Your conscience shouts, here's what you should do, while your intuition whispers, here's what you could do. Listen to that voice that tells you what you could do. Nothing will define your character more than that.
What I find with you is that it's truly what interests you, what it is you want to know at that point, what it is you want to see.
And I think it's okay that a first-time filmmaker, being so inspired by movies and music videos and any kind of music or media, can make a derivative film. It's okay that your first videos and your first attempts at telling a story are derivative, are obviously influenced by something that that you saw last week, and you want to kind of do a version. There's nothing wrong with learning the ABCs, learning your craft by being derivative, but at some point you're going to need to find your natural voice and find a way to give voice to who you are. And who you are, by the way, who you are is original. It just is, because you're not Tom, you're not me, and you're not your best friend, and you're not your teacher, you're not your parents. You are you. And because of that, you do have, every bone in your body is an original bone. It's sometimes trying to figure out how to express your own originality, and that sometimes takes a number of years to figure yourself out. The shark broke down because of mechanical problems, actually beyond our control. And I just went ahead and made the movie anyway, using the ocean as the nemesis, or at least as the threat. And I think it cranked up the suspense a lot more. That shark was a complete prima donna, and just would not come out of its dressing room. Its dressing room happened to be the Atlantic Ocean, but we could not get the shark to make an appearance. And I think, in a sense, because the shark didn't show up, the shark's a no-show saved the movie.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
People say, you know, gee, the movie's really scary because my imagination saw more of the shark than you actually showed me. Well, part of that was intentional, because I thought I could scare people with just the ocean line and just the mystery of what's under the murky water, but also the darn shark wouldn't come out of his dressing room for months. I mean, the thing never worked. The shark on Jaws works much better on the Universal tour than it ever worked on Martha's Vineyard when I made Jaws.
E.T. was a gift that came from the heavens for me. I was in Tunisia making Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we were setting up a shot, and I was picking up fossils in the desert, which used to be the bottom of the ocean millions of years ago. And we were out there in the Nefta Desert. I was picking up, and I was remembering the end of Close Encounters, when Richard Dreyfuss goes up into the mothership, and just before that, the little alien comes down and does the hand signs to Francois Truffaut. And it just hit me out of the sky. I thought, what if the alien had stayed behind on Earth? What if he didn't? What if it was a kind of foreign exchange? Dreyfuss goes away and the alien stays, and suddenly this whole story hit me like a ton of bricks. And which was really a story about my mom and dad when they got divorced, and how I felt as a kid, wanting a friend like that to fill the void in my life. And all these things came pouring in, and I actually put the story together in a couple of days. And then it happened to be that Harrison Ford's wife, Melissa Matheson, who had co-written The Black Stallion, was on the set with Harrison. And I just want to get this thing written, and I love Black Stallion. I said, hey Melissa, you want to write this? She said no. And then Harrison talked her into it, and then she said yes eventually. And she did a tremendously wonderful screenplay for